The Watchers in the Dark. The void between stars had always belonged to the Zephyrian Empire. For 3 centuries, their sleek warships had carved paths through space, bringing 47 star systems under their iron rule. Their ships moved like silver daggers through the darkness, silent and deadly, carrying the promise of conquest to every world they encountered. Commander Kylix stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Pride, his tall, angular frame casting a shadow across the command deck. His species had evolved on a world of eternal twilight, giving him pale, almost translucent skin and large, dark eyes that missed nothing. The neural implant at his temple pulsed with a soft blue light, connecting him directly to the ship's systems. Status report, Navigation Officer Vex. Kylix commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. Vex, a shorter Zephyrian with intricate tattoos marking his rank, manipulated the holographic display with practiced precision. We have completed the survey of Sector 7, Commander. 43 planetary systems catalogued. Most show no signs of intelligent life. However, we have detected one system that may be of interest. The main display shifted to show a small yellow star surrounded by several planets. One world, the third from the star, glowed with a blue-green light that indicated abundant water and atmosphere. Designation Sol 3, Vex continued. The inhabitants call it Earth. Preliminary scans show a technologically developing species. They have achieved basic spaceflight and have established several orbital installations. Our xenobiologists classify them as mammalian humanoids with an estimated population of 8 billion. Kylix studied the readings with interest. The Zephyrian Empire had a specific protocol for dealing with developing species. Those showing promise would be absorbed into the Empire as worker classes. Those deemed too primitive or aggressive would be eliminated to prevent future threats. Military capabilities. Kylix asked. Negligible, Vex replied with what might have been amusement in his voice. They fight among themselves constantly. Their weapons are crude chemical explosives and basic energy projection. They have no unified planetary government and appear to be in a constant state of minor conflicts. Typical primitive behavior, Kylix mused. Schedule them for integration protocols. A species that fights itself constantly will be easy to control once we demonstrate superior force. What Commander Kylix didn't know was that 3 light minutes away, Captain Sarah Chen was having a very different conversation aboard the UES Prometheus. The Prometheus represented the pinnacle of human engineering, though it looked nothing like the graceful Zephyrian vessels. Where alien ships favored smooth curves and artistic elegance, human design philosophy embraced functional brutality. The ship's hull was angular and aggressive, covered in sensor arrays and defensive systems that gave it the appearance of a mechanized predator. Captain Chen stood barely 5.5 feet tall, but her presence filled the bridge. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation military style, and her brown eyes held the sharp intelligence that had earned her command of humanity's most advanced exploration vessel. The crew around her worked with the efficient coordination that came from years of training together. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson Webb, the ship's tactical officer. Webb was a mountain of a man, his broad shoulders straining against his uniform as he leaned over his console. Unknown configuration, but the energy signatures suggest advanced propulsion systems. Are they trying to communicate? Chen asked, moving to Webb's station. Negative, Captain. They appear to be conducting some kind of detailed scan of our position. Dr. Santos thinks they might be studying us. Dr. Elena Santos, the ship's chief science officer, looked up from her station. Her face showed the excitement of a researcher encountering something completely new. Captain, the scanning patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The technology appears to be several generations ahead of our current capabilities, but there's something strange about their approach. They're scanning us like we're specimens in a laboratory. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. First contact scenarios had been drilled into every Earth Defense Force officer, But the reality was always different from the simulations. Send a standard greeting on all frequencies, mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and peaceful intent signals. Transmitting now, Captain, replied Communications Officer Lisa Park, her fingers dancing across her console. No response yet. Wait, I'm getting something. It's not a reply to our greeting. It looks like they're discussing us on an open channel. Can you translate? The AI is working on it, but some words are coming through. Primitive, integration, something about worker classes, and Captain, I think they're talking about conquest. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Shen had hoped their first contact with an alien species would be a moment of wonder and discovery. Instead, it appeared they had encountered a civilization that viewed humanity as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. Red alert, Chen ordered quietly. Bring weapons online, but do not target their vessel. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. On the Sovereign's Pride, Navigation Officer Vex suddenly straightened at his station. Commander, the human vessel is powering up its systems. Energy signatures are increasing across all spectrums. Kylix turned his attention back to the display showing the human ship. What he saw made him pause. The vessel that had appeared primitive and crude was now bristling with energy. Weapon ports that had been invisible moments before were now glowing with contained power. Shield generators created a shimmering barrier around the ship's hull. Interesting, Kylix murmured. It appears these humans have some surprises. Still, a single vessel poses no threat to the Pride. He was about to order his crew to disable the human ship when everything went wrong. The humans didn't wait for the aliens to make the first move. Years of warfare on Earth had taught humanity that hesitation in the face of a threat was often fatal. Captain Chen had made her decision. Fire warning shots across their bow, she ordered. Make it clear we're not helpless prey. The Prometheus unleashed a controlled burst from its plasma cannons. The energy bolt streaked across space, passing just ahead of the Zephyrian vessel. But what the aliens saw wasn't just a warning shot. Their sensors registered the energy output and recoiled in shock. Impossible, breathed Weapons Officer Zax aboard the Sovereign's Pride. Commander, those energy readings. A single burst from their weapons contains more destructive force than our primary batteries. Kylix felt the first stirring of something he hadn't experienced in decades. Doubt. You must be mistaken. Recheck your readings. Confirmed, Commander. Whatever technology these humans are using, it's far more advanced than our initial scans indicated. The situation deteriorated rapidly. A junior officer on the Pride, panicking at the display of human firepower, accidentally triggered the ship's defensive systems. The Zephyrian vessel suddenly lit up with targeting arrays and began charging its own weapons. Aboard the Prometheus, Lieutenant Commander Webb's voice cut through the tension. Captain, they're locking weapons on us. Multiple targeting systems coming online. Chen didn't hesitate. Evasive maneuvers, emergency power to shields. Return fire, full spread. The space between the two ships erupted in violence. The Zephyrian vessel, for all its elegant design, fought like a creature of habit. Its attacks followed predictable patterns based on centuries of successful conquest. The human ship, however, moved like something wild and dangerous. Captain Chen had learned tactics not in peaceful exploration, but in the crucible of Earth's various conflicts. The Prometheus twisted and rolled through space in ways that defied Zephyrian understanding of proper ship handling. Where the alien vessel expected the humans to retreat or surrender, the Prometheus pressed its attack with relentless aggression. Direct hit on their forward sections, Webb reported. Their shields are fluctuating. But the Prometheus was taking damage too. The Zephyrian weapons were precise and powerful, designed to disable enemy vessels for capture rather than destruction. Sparks flew from damaged consoles as the human crew fought to keep their ship operational. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Chief Engineer Martinez over the comm. Sealing emergency bulkheads. We can't take much more of this, Captain. Chen made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of continuing the fight or attempting to surrender, she chose a third option that the Zephyrians never saw coming. "Charge the quantum drive," she ordered. "Emergency jump to coordinates Sierra 77. Dr. Santos looked up in alarm. "Captain, we've never tested a quantum jump this close to another vessel. The spatial distortion cooled." "Do it," Chen cut her off. "Whatever happens, we need to get word back to Earth about these aliens." The Prometheus began to glow with an energy that the Zephyrians had never encountered. Space itself seemed to bend around the human vessel as exotic matter interactions created a bubble of twisted spacetime. Commander Kylix watched in fascination and horror as the human ship began to fade from normal space. "What are they doing? Stop them!" But it was too late. The Prometheus vanished in a flash of quantum fire, leaving behind only residual energy signatures and the lingering scan data that the Zephyrian sensors had captured during the brief but intense battle. In the sudden silence of empty space, Kylix stared at the readings his crew had gathered. The human vessel had demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist. Quantum manipulation on that scale required understanding of physics that even the Zephyrian Empire hadn't fully mastered. "Commander," Vex said quietly, "should we proceed with the integration protocols for the Sol system?" Kylix considered the question carefully. The brief encounter had shattered every assumption he had made about the species from Earth. They weren't primitive. They weren't helpless. And most disturbing of all, they had shown a willingness to fight rather than submit. "Send a message to High Command," he finally ordered. "Request a full battle fleet for the Sol operation. These humans are not what they appear to be." As the Sovereign's pride turned away from the empty space where the battle had occurred, neither Kylix nor his crew realized they had just sealed the fate of the Zephyrian Empire. The scan data they had captured would be analyzed by their best scientists, revealing technology that would terrify even their most hardened warriors. And somewhere in the quantum foam between dimensions, the UES Prometheus raced home with news that would change everything. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new neighbors were not friendly. The age of human innocence was over. The age of human warfare was about to begin. When Earth strikes back. 6 months had passed since the UES Prometheus limped back into Earth's solar system with news that changed everything. The damaged exploration vessel had barely made it to Luna Station before Captain Chen collapsed from radiation poisoning sustained during the quantum jump. But her report had reached the right people, and humanity's response was swift and decisive. Admiral Marcus Sterling stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the outer system sensors with the patience of a predator. At 62, he was one of Earth's most experienced military commanders, a veteran of the Martian Independence War and the Belt conflicts. His gray hair was cropped short in military fashion, and his blue eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had seen too much war. The Retribution itself was a testament to human ingenuity and paranoia. While the Prometheus had been built for exploration, the Retribution was designed for one purpose: to kill anything that threatened Earth. The massive battleship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapons systems that represented the pinnacle of human military technology. "Contact," reported Commander Lisa Park, now serving as the Admiral's tactical coordinator after her experience aboard the Prometheus. Multiple signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. "Count is, Admiral, we have 37 vessels of unknown configuration." Sterling nodded grimly. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network had been tracking the approaching fleet for weeks. The aliens had taken their time, apparently gathering a force they considered sufficient to conquer humanity's home system. "Signal all units," Sterling ordered. "Execute Lazarus Protocol. Let's show our guests what human hospitality really looks like." Throughout the solar system, what the Zephyrians had assumed were simple mining stations and orbital platforms suddenly came alive with purpose. Hidden weapon batteries emerged from asteroids. Cloaked battleships powered up their systems and prepared for combat. Most impressive of all, The seemingly peaceful space stations around Earth, Mars, and the outer planets revealed themselves to be massive fortress complexes. Commander Kylix, now promoted to fleet commander after his encounter with the Prometheus, stood aboard the Imperial Fist, the largest vessel in the Zephyrian invasion fleet. The ship dwarfed even the Retribution, its elegant curves hiding enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface. Sensors report multiple contacts throughout the system, his tactical officer reported. The humans appear to have more vessels than our intelligence indicated. Kylix studied the tactical display with growing unease. The scan data from his previous encounter had suggested advanced technology, but this was beyond his worst expectations. The humans hadn't just prepared for war. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. "No matter," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "We outnumber them significantly. Begin the assault. Target their primary military installations first." The Zephyrian fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their ships maintaining the precise spacing and coordination that had brought them victory in 47 previous conquests. It was a beautiful display of military efficiency and overwhelming force. It was also exactly what Admiral Sterling had hoped they would do. "They're following the same tactical doctrine as every other military force in the galaxy," Sterling observed with grim satisfaction. "Predictable formation, overwhelming firepower, standard conquest protocols. They're fighting the last war, not this one." The first indication the Zephyrians had that something was wrong came when their advanced scouts simply vanished. One moment they were reporting clear approach vectors to the inner planets. The next moment their signals cut off entirely. "What happened to Scout Group 7? Kylix demanded. "Unknown, Fleet Commander." Their signals ceased simultaneously across all frequencies. What Kylix couldn't see were the human stealth frigates that had eliminated his scouts using weapons that left no energy signature. The ships themselves were built using metamaterials that bent electromagnetic radiation around them, making them effectively invisible to conventional sensors. Captain Sarah Chen, recovered from her injuries, and now commanding the stealth frigate UES Shadow, watched the alien fleet through her ship's advanced sensors. "Target their communications array," she ordered her weapons officer. "Let's see how well they coordinate when they can't talk to each other." The Shadow's quantum torpedoes struck the Imperial Fist's primary communications dish with surgical precision. The explosion was small but devastating, severing the Zephyrian fleet's command and control network at the moment they needed it most. Suddenly, Kylix found himself unable to coordinate with his other ships. Each vessel was fighting independently, following their training but unable to adapt to the rapidly changing tactical situation. "Restore communications immediately," he ordered, but his crew was already working frantically at damaged consoles. That's when the real attack began. The human fleet didn't emerge from behind planets or asteroid belts like conventional forces. Instead, they seemed to materialize out of empty space itself. Ships that had been invisible suddenly appeared at point-blank range, their weapons already firing. The Zephyrian formation, so perfect moments before, dissolved into chaos as captains found themselves under attack from directions they hadn't even known were possible. The UES Retribution led the assault, its massive frame accelerating toward the enemy fleet with an aggressiveness that shocked the aliens, where Zephyrian tactics emphasized precise, overwhelming strikes followed by demands for surrender. Human tactics were based on one simple principle: if you're in a fair fight, you're doing it wrong. "All batteries, fire at will," Sterling commanded. "Target their largest vessels first. Let's cut the head off this snake." The Retribution's weapons were unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered. Instead of the elegant energy beams favored by most civilizations, human weapons were crude, brutal, and devastatingly effective. Quantum-accelerated projectiles struck with the force of small meteors. Plasma cannons superheated armor until it became gas. Most terrifying of all were the gravity bombs that created localized gravitational anomalies, crushing enemy ships from within. Aboard the Imperial Fist, Weapons Officer Zach stared at his displays in disbelief. "Fleet Commander, their weapons. They're not following any known physics models. The energy outputs are impossible. Kylix was beginning to understand the terrible mistake he had made. The humans weren't just technologically advanced. They were completely unpredictable. Every assumption the Zephyrian Empire had made about warfare was being shattered by enemies who refused to follow the rules. "Return fire," he ordered. All ships concentrated barrage on their flagship. The response was immediate and devastating. Dozens of Zephyrian vessels turned their weapons on the Retribution, unleashing enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Energy beams and projectiles converged on the human battleship in a display that should have reduced it to vapor. Instead, the Retribution's shields flared brilliantly and held. The ship shuddered under the impact, but continued its attack without pause. "Impossible," breathed Navigation Officer Vex. "No ship can withstand that much concentrated fire." But the humans had learned a hard lesson from the Prometheus's encounter 6 months earlier. Every ship in the defense fleet was equipped with adaptive shields that analyzed incoming attacks and automatically adjusted their frequency to provide maximum protection. The technology was based on principles the Zephyrians didn't even understand. The battle raged across the solar system for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Zephyrian fleet, despite its superior numbers, was fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, disappeared when they should have been destroyed, and struck with weapons that defied conventional understanding. Most disturbing of all was the psychological warfare. Human ships broadcast messages on Zephyrian frequencies, not threats or demands for surrender, but something far worse. They transmitted recordings of human music, specifically chosen for its aggressive, primal nature. Heavy metal and war drums echoed through Zephyrian vessels, creating an atmosphere of barely controlled chaos that interfered with their crew's ability to think clearly. Commander Kylix, his ship heavily damaged and his fleet in shambles, finally understood what he was facing. These weren't primitive mammals to be conquered and enslaved. These were apex predators who had turned warfare into an art form. "Fleet Commander," his communications officer reported with obvious fear, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." Admiral Sterling's image appeared on the main screen, his face showing the calm expression of someone completely in control of the situation. When he spoke, his words were translated into perfect Zephyrian. "Commander Kylix, I presume. Your intelligence files make for interesting reading. 47 conquered worlds, millions of enslaved beings, centuries of unopposed expansion." Sterling paused, his eyes never leaving Kylix. "That ends today. You cannot defeat the entire Zephyrian Empire," Kylix replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "This fleet is merely the advance force. I'm counting on it," Sterling said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We want your empire to know exactly what they're dealing with. You have 2 choices, Commander. Surrender your remaining vessels, and we'll allow you to return home with a message. Or continue fighting and join the 17 ships we've already destroyed." Kylix looked around his damaged bridge. Half his consoles were dark. Emergency lights flickered ominously, and he could smell the acrid smoke of burned electronics. Through the main view screen, he could see the remnants of his once mighty fleet. Ships that had been the pride of the Zephyrian military were now drifting hulks or expanding clouds of debris. "What message?" he asked quietly. "Tell your empire that Earth is not for conquest. Tell them that humanity has been fighting wars since before your species discovered fire, and we've gotten very good at it. Tell them that if they want a war with us, they'll get one. But it won't be the kind of war they're used to." Sterling leaned forward in his command chair. "Most importantly, tell them that we know where they live. Our deep space reconnaissance vessels have been mapping their territory for months. If the Zephyrian Empire chooses to continue this aggression, the next battle won't be fought in our solar system." The implication was clear and terrifying. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were preparing to take the war to their enemies' homeworlds. Kylix made the only decision he could. I surrender." Within hours, the surviving Zephyrian vessels were limping out of the solar system, their holds filled with detailed recordings of the battle, and their crews traumatized by their first encounter with human military doctrine. The message they carried back to their empire was simple and devastating. Humanity was not prey. In the months that followed, word of the failed invasion spread throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, once considered invincible, had been humiliated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Other civilizations that had been planning their own expansion into human space quietly abandoned those plans. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to admiral and commanding Earth's new deep strike fleet, stood on the observation deck of the UES Nemesis, watching construction crews work on the next generation of human warships. These vessels were even more advanced than the Retribution, designed not for defense, but for carrying the war to Earth's enemies. "The Zephyrians have been quiet for 3 months," reported her aide, Commander Webb. "No movement from their fleet bases, no reconnaissance probes. Intelligence thinks they're in full defensive mode." Chen nodded, but her expression remained thoughtful. "They'll be back eventually. Species like that don't give up easily. But next time, they'll bring everything they have." "Will we be ready?" Chen smiled, and for just a moment, Webb caught a glimpse of the predator that lurked beneath humanity's civilized surface. "Commander, we've been getting ready for war since we climbed down from the trees. The only difference now is that we have better weapons." She turned back to watch the construction crews working on the new ships. Each vessel was a testament to human ingenuity and determination, built by a species that had never known peace and had no intention of starting now. The galaxy had wanted to meet humanity. Now it would learn what that really meant. In the depths of space, other civilizations monitored the radio transmissions coming from the Sol system. What they heard filled them with a mixture of fascination and terror. The humans weren't celebrating their victory with the dignified restraint expected of a mature civilization. Instead, their communications were filled with planning for the next conflict, discussions of new weapon systems, and the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that marked them as a species born for war. The message was clear to anyone listening. Earth's children had finally reached the stars, and they had brought their appetites with them. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The end